It started with one collision, one violent reaction, and one decision that instantly changed the temperature inside the arena. DeJonai Carrington came flying in on Sophie Cunningham. The contact sent Cunningham crashing to the floor, and suddenly a routine basketball sequence had become the moment everyone was watching. The whistle came, the review began, and the atmosphere changed almost immediately. Nobody in that building was treating this like just another foul anymore. The officials went to the monitor and reviewed the play from multiple angles. What they saw led to a flagrant 2 in Carrington's ejection. Cunningham got back to her feet furious, teammates rushed in, and the tension was obvious. But that was only the beginning. Because while the game continued, the story started moving somewhere else. Carrington took the controversy to social media with 2 words that immediately ignited another argument, turning a basketball incident into a much broader debate about race, perception, and accountability. Suddenly, people were no longer arguing only about whether the contact deserved a flagrant 2. They were arguing about what the entire sequence represented. And then the stakes became even bigger. Carrington's endorsement relationship with Reebok came under intense pressure from fans demanding consequences. The source material does not establish that Reebok actually terminated her contract, but the public backlash was clearly becoming part of the story. And somehow, that still wasn't the biggest twist of the night. Later in the game, Caitlin Clark became involved in another controversial sequence, this time with an official. A technical foul initially threatened to keep Clark out of the Fever's next game, creating an entirely different storm around officiating inconsistency. 1 game. 2 explosive controversies. 2 completely different interpretations. And by the time the final whistle arrived, the scoreboard almost felt secondary. Because this wasn't just about what happened on the court anymore. It was about accountability, perception, pressure, and what happens when every decision is being watched under a microscope. And this is where everything changed. For a moment, it looked like a fast break play that had simply gone too far. Sophie Cunningham was moving toward the basket, the opportunity for an easy finish was there, and DeJonai Carrington was chasing from behind. Then everything happened at once. Carrington came in with serious momentum and made contact with Cunningham around the head and neck area. Cunningham went down hard as the ball went through the basket. But almost immediately, she was back on her feet. And she was furious. Cunningham charged toward Carrington and shoved her as teammates moved in, trying to prevent the confrontation from becoming something even bigger. The arena was already buzzing, but now the attention had completely shifted away from the basket. Everyone wanted to know what the officials were going to do. The referees went to the monitor. And this is where the interpretation became important. According to the source material, the officials focused on 3 elements of the contact: a wind-up, the force of the impact, and the follow-through. Because the contact was considered severe and involved the head and neck area, the foul was upgraded to a flagrant 2. Carrington was ejected. That decision is the confirmed part of the story. The debate began with everything surrounding it. Carrington's position, as presented in the source, was that she was attempting to make a basketball play. She was going for the ball. She did not present the contact as an intentional attack. But critics were looking at a completely different part of the sequence. They weren't focused only on what Carrington intended to do. They were focused on what actually happened when she arrived. The contact was heavy. Cunningham was hit high, went to the floor, and immediately reacted with anger. And that's why the argument became so divided. One interpretation centered on intent. If the player was genuinely trying to make a play on the ball, should that change how the incident is judged? The other interpretation centered on impact. Regardless of intent, was the force and location of the contact serious enough to justify the most severe foul and an ejection? Those are 2 very different questions. And once the replay started circulating, everyone seemed to have an answer. But the next development took this far beyond basketball, because Carrington didn't simply leave the controversy behind when she left the court. She took it with her. The game was still being played, but the controversy had already escaped the arena. According to the source material, shortly after being sent to the locker room, DeJonai Carrington went online and posted 2 words: white privilege. She also tagged the Indiana Fever. That changed the conversation almost instantly. Up to that point, the central argument was about a basketball play. Was the contact severe enough for a flagrant 2? Was Carrington genuinely attempting to make a play on the ball? Did the officials get the call right? Now, the discussion had moved into something much broader. people began interpreting the post through the existing tension surrounding the WNBA, its players, and the constant attention surrounding Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. Some viewers saw Carrington's post as an accusation about unequal treatment. Others saw it as escalating a basketball controversy into a racial argument before the facts surrounding the play had even settled. And that distinction matters. The source material tells us what Carrington posted. It also gives us the reaction. But it does not establish every motive people later assigned to those two words. That is where Emmanuel Aco entered the conversation. Aco pushed the discussion back toward the basketball itself, arguing that Carrington had made a basketball play, the referee had made a basketball ruling, and the focus should remain on what happened on the court. He acknowledged that Carrington said she was attempting to play the ball, while also pointing out that the actual result was a flagrant hit to Cunningham. That framing created another divide. One side was asking whether the larger social context surrounding the players mattered. The other wanted the incident judged strictly as a basketball decision. And once those two interpretations collided, the original foul almost became secondary. Because now people weren't simply debating a referee's call. They were debating whether the conversation surrounding that call had exposed a deeper problem of perception and double standards. And that is exactly why this moment became so difficult to contain. What began with one collision had now become a national argument unfolding in real time. And then the controversy reached the one place where outrage can become especially expensive, the business world. Carrington wasn't only dealing with criticism from basketball fans anymore. According to the source material, she had a multi-year ambassador relationship with Reebok, a major commercial opportunity that represented another part of her career beyond the basketball court. But after the incident and the social media backlash, fans began tagging Reebok and demanding that the company take action. Calls for the brand to drop Carrington spread online, with some people arguing that an endorsement relationship should come with expectations about conduct and public image. And this is where the story needs an important reality check. The source does not establish that Reebok terminated Carrington's contract. In fact, it specifically acknowledges that the company had not officially pulled the endorsement at that point. So the real story wasn't confirmed lost millions. It was the pressure surrounding the possibility of losing valuable endorsement income and damaging a marketable reputation. That distinction changes everything. A social media backlash can be loud, but a corporation has to make a very different calculation. Brands have contracts, business relationships, legal considerations, and reputations of their own. A viral demand from fans does not automatically become a corporate decision. Still, the pressure itself became part of the controversy. Because Carrington's situation was no longer being judged solely by what happened during a basketball game. Her public image, commercial relationships, and future earning potential were suddenly being pulled into the conversation. And that creates a completely different kind of pressure for an athlete. On the court, a player can survive a bad game. In business, a controversy can follow you long after the final whistle. And while the internet was demanding consequences for Carrington, another controversy was quietly developing on the same court, one that would put Caitlin Clark, the officials, and the entire question of accountability under an even brighter spotlight. But just when it seemed like the Carrington controversy was already big enough, another moment shifted the entire night in a completely different direction. This time, the spotlight turned to Caitlin Clark. During a chaotic sequence in the third quarter, Clark was forced toward the sideline by Chicago's Natasha Cloud. As Clark stumbled out of bounds, she made contact with an official. The whistle came immediately, and the referee assessed Clark a technical foul. That call carried consequences far beyond a single free throw. According to the source material, it was Clark's 8th technical foul of the regular season, which initially triggered an automatic one-game suspension. Suddenly, the Fever were facing the possibility of losing their star point guard for their next game against the New York Liberty. And inside the Indiana bench, the reaction was immediate. Stephanie White strongly argued that the contact was incidental. She was given a technical foul herself while disputing the decision, insisting that Clark was simply moving out of bounds and that the contact wasn't intentional. But the call had already been made. For Clark, the situation was especially frustrating because the consequences weren't just about what happened in that moment. One technical foul had potentially turned into an entire missed game. And that meant the question was no longer simply whether the official should have blown the whistle. It was whether the punishment that followed actually matched what happened. Clark later explained that the official's account was that Clark had run into the referee. But Clark said she had already watched the replay and viewed the contact as incidental. Rather than escalating the argument, she indicated that the league could review the footage and make the final determination. That response left the controversy hanging in the air. Would the suspension stand? If it did, Indiana would have to move forward without Clark for a major matchup. If it didn't, then the league would have effectively acknowledged that the original technical foul should not have counted. And while fans were already arguing about officiating, there was another question becoming impossible to ignore: how much can one controversial whistle change the course of an entire season? At that moment, nobody had the answer. The decision was still waiting. And when it finally came, it changed the story all over again. And then came the decision that changed the entire night. According to the source material, the WNBA reviewed the contact involving Caitlin Clark in the official and ultimately rescinded Clark's technical foul. That meant the technical no longer counted toward her total, and the one-game suspension that initially followed was eliminated. Just like that, the possibility of Clark missing the next game disappeared. For Clark and the Fever, it was a significant reversal. What had looked like a potentially costly suspension became a decision that went in their favor after the league reviewed the footage. And that immediately created two very different interpretations. One side saw the decision as the system working exactly as it should. A controversial call was reviewed, the footage was examined, and the league corrected the ruling. From that perspective, the most important thing wasn't that the original whistle happened. It was that the league was willing to reverse it when the review produced a different conclusion. But another interpretation was already taking shape. For those viewers, the bigger issue wasn't simply one technical foul. It was the growing number of controversial officiating moments becoming part of the conversation surrounding the WNBA. When incidents involving high-profile players repeatedly become major storylines, questions about consistency naturally follow. That doesn't prove bias. It doesn't establish that officials were targeting Clark. And the rescission itself doesn't prove that anyone was acting improperly. But it does show why these moments generate so much attention. Every whistle is being examined. Every replay is being dissected. Every disciplinary decision can become a headline. And in a league where the spotlight has never been brighter, that level of scrutiny creates enormous pressure for everyone involved. The fascinating part is that the league's reversal didn't end the argument. It actually gave both sides more to talk about. Because now the question wasn't only whether the original call was right. It was whether the process for correcting controversial calls is consistent enough that players, coaches, and fans can trust it. And that question was much bigger than one game. And after all the controversy, all the arguments, and all the scrutiny, the scoreboard delivered its own answer. Indiana won the game 90-86. Caitlin Clark finished with 26 points and 11 assists, giving the Fever a result that mattered far more than the noise surrounding them. While social media was consumed by fouls, technicals, suspensions, and accusations, Indiana kept playing. But the bigger story wasn't really the final score. It was the completely different paths these two controversies took. Carrington left the game after a flagrant 2 and then found herself at the center of an enormous public backlash. Her social media post expanded the conversation beyond basketball, while fans began putting pressure on one of her major commercial relationships. The source material does not establish that Reebok actually dropped her, but the possibility itself became part of the controversy. Then there was Clark. Her technical foul initially appeared capable of forcing her to miss the next game. Instead, the league reviewed the incident and rescinded the technical, eliminating the suspension. Two players. Two controversial moments. Two very different outcomes. And that's why this story doesn't have a clean ending. There is the question of accountability. There is the question of officiating consistency. There is the influence of social media. And hovering over all of it is the enormous commercial pressure surrounding today's WNBA stars. Because once an incident becomes bigger than the game, everything changes. A foul can become a headline. A post can become a national debate. A referee's decision can become a league-wide argument. And a player's reputation can suddenly become part of a corporate conversation. The game may have ended at 90-86. But the debate surrounding it didn't. If anything, the final whistle was just the moment when the basketball stopped and the larger argument really began.